Something impossible is about to happen to you. Not in some distant future, not when conditions align perfectly, but right here, in this moment, as you listen to these words. You've been searching for it your entire life without knowing what you were looking for. You felt its absence like a phantom limb, an ache you couldn't name. And today that search ends, not because I will give you something you don't have, but because I will remind you of something you've forgotten. Marcus Aurelius discovered this truth 2,000 years ago while the world burned around him. He wrote it in his private journals, never meant for anyone else to see. And what he discovered was so profound, so world-altering, that once you truly hear it, once it penetrates beyond your thinking mind and lands in the core of your being, reality itself begins to reorganize around you. This isn't motivation. This isn't positive thinking. This is something far more ancient and far more powerful. This is the impossible made possible through a single shift in consciousness. Stay with me, because by the end of this message, you will not be the same person who started listening. Before we continue, if something inside you recognizes the truth in these words, if you feel drawn to go deeper, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Your support allows this wisdom to reach more people who are ready. Now, let's begin. There's something you've believed impossible for so long that you've stopped even hoping for it. Maybe it's inner peace in a mind that won't stop racing. Maybe it's freedom from a past that follows you like a shadow. Maybe it's the courage to become who you know you're meant to be. Maybe it's love that doesn't hurt. Maybe it's simply feeling okay in your own skin, in this world, in this moment. You've tried everything. You've read the books, followed the advice, attempted the strategies, and still that impossible thing remains out of reach, mocking you from a distance you can't seem to cross. Marcus Aurelius understood this feeling intimately. He stood at the pinnacle of human power as emperor of Rome, yet he felt powerless over his own mind. He had wealth beyond measure, yet he couldn't buy peace. He commanded armies, yet he couldn't command his own thoughts to stop tormenting him. And in that contradiction, in that gap between external power and internal chaos, he discovered something that changed everything. He realized that the impossible thing he was chasing, the peace he was seeking, the freedom he was desperately trying to achieve was impossible for one simple reason. He was looking in the wrong direction. He was trying to change circumstances when what needed to change was perception. He was attempting to control reality when what needed controlling was his relationship to reality. And the moment he saw this, the moment this truth penetrated his awareness, the impossible became not just possible, but inevitable. Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this is where most people miss it. The impossible thing you're seeking is impossible only because you're seeking it. The very act of chasing it confirms its absence. The very energy of wanting it reinforces the belief that you don't have it. You're like someone searching desperately for their glasses while they're already on their face. The thing you want is not somewhere else. It's not in the future. It's not dependent on circumstances changing. It's here, now, obscured only by the seeking itself. This sounds like a paradox, and it is. But paradox is where truth lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations something that most people read but few truly hear. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But what does realize really mean? Not understand intellectually, not grasp conceptually, but realize, to make real, to embody, to live from that knowing, rather than just think about it. The impossible becomes possible the moment you stop trying to make it happen and instead allow it to emerge. The moment you stop fighting against what is and instead align with it. The moment you stop believing you're broken and need fixing and instead recognize you're whole and always have been. This isn't giving up. This isn't resignation. This is the most profound shift available to human consciousness. From doing to being. From seeking to finding. From future to now. There's a message that's been trying to reach you your entire life. It's been whispered in moments of stillness. It's appeared in synchronicities you dismissed as coincidence. It's spoken through every teacher, every book, every experience that touched something deep inside you. But you haven't been able to hear it clearly because your mind has been too loud. Your thoughts have been drowning out the signal with their constant noise. The message is simple, but simplicity is not the same as easy. The message is this: you are not who you think you are. The story you've been telling yourself about yourself, the identity you've constructed from memories and beliefs and wounds and achievements, is a fiction. A convincing one, a compelling one, but a fiction nonetheless. And the moment you see through that fiction, the moment you recognize it as a costume you're wearing rather than who you actually are, everything changes. Marcus Aurelius spent years trying to become a better person, trying to improve his character, strengthen his virtues, overcome his weaknesses. And then one day, sitting alone in his tent while war raged outside, he had a realization that shattered everything he thought he knew. He realized he wasn't the character. He was the awareness in which the character appeared. He wasn't the thoughts. He was the space in which thoughts arose and passed. He wasn't the emotions. He was the presence that experienced emotions without being defined by them. This realization didn't make him special. It made him ordinary in the most extraordinary way. Because what he discovered is true for everyone. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness of thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the consciousness that experiences emotions. You are not your past. You are the eternal now in which past memories appear as present thoughts. You are not your future. You are the timeless presence that imagines futures without ever leaving this moment. And here's why this matters. Why this is the message that changes everything. When you identify as the character, as the person with problems that need solving and wounds that need healing, and goals that need achieving, you're caught in an endless loop. Because the character is made of thought, and thought is the problem pretending to be the solution. Thought creates the sense of lack, then offers strategies to fill the lack, which only reinforces the belief in lack. It's a trap. A beautiful, intricate, convincing trap, but a trap nonetheless. The message that's been trying to reach you is this: you can step out of the trap anytime you choose, not by thinking your way out, that's impossible, but by recognizing what's already free. The awareness that's reading these words right now is not trapped. It never has been. It's been watching the drama of your life unfold without ever being touched by it. Like a screen that remains unchanged no matter what movie plays across it. Like the sky that remains clear no matter what weather passes through it. This awareness, this consciousness, this presence, this is what you actually are. And it is already everything you've been seeking. It is already peaceful, because peace is its nature. It is already free because freedom is what it is. It is already whole, because it has never been broken. The impossible thing you've been chasing is not something to achieve. It's something to recognize. It's already here. It's what you are. And the moment you truly hear this message, not as concept but as direct experience, the impossible happens. Your life is built on a foundation of beliefs you never consciously chose. Beliefs about who you are, what you're capable of, how the world works, what's possible and what's not. These beliefs were given to you by parents, culture, education, experience, and you absorbed them so completely, so unconsciously, that you've never questioned them. You've simply assumed they're true, assumed they're reality rather than interpretation. But here's what Marcus Aurelius understood that most people never grasp. Beliefs are not facts. They are filters, lenses through which you perceive reality. And the lens you're looking through determines what you see. If you believe you're inadequate, you'll find evidence everywhere. If you believe you're unlovable, every relationship will confirm it. If you believe peace is impossible, you'll never stop searching for it. Not because these things are true, but because your belief creates the perception that makes them appear true. There's a story about a man who believed he was dead. His delusion was so complete that nothing could convince him otherwise. His family tried reasoning with him. Doctors tried proving his heart was beating, his blood was flowing. Nothing worked. Finally, a clever physician asked him a question. Do dead people bleed? The man thought for a moment and said, No, of course not. Dead people don't bleed. So the doctor pricked the man's finger with a needle. Blood appeared. The man stared at it in shock and said, Well, I'll be damned. Dead people do bleed after all. This story illustrates something profound about the human mind. We don't change our beliefs to match reality. We change our perception of reality to match our beliefs. We're so committed to being right about our worldview that we'll distort evidence, dismiss facts, and rationalize contradictions rather than question the fundamental assumptions we're operating from. Your belief that change is impossible, that you can't heal, that you'll never be free, that you're stuck in these patterns forever. These beliefs are not truths. They are conclusions drawn from limited data, reinforced by selective attention, and maintained by the part of you that's afraid of what might happen if they weren't true. Because if they're not true, if change is actually possible, then you have to take responsibility. You can't blame circumstances or your past or other people anymore. You have to step into your power. And that's terrifying. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that cuts through all of this like a sword through silk. Our life is what our thoughts make it, not what our circumstances make it, not what happened to us, not what others did or didn't do, what our thoughts make it, and thoughts arise from beliefs. So if you change the belief at the foundation, the entire structure of your experience changes with it. But you can't change a belief through willpower or positive thinking. You can't simply decide to believe something different and expect it to stick. Beliefs change through direct experience, through seeing clearly what's actually true versus what you've assumed to be true, through questioning everything you've taken for granted and discovering what remains when all the assumptions fall away. The impossible becomes possible when you realize that the belief in impossibility is just that, a belief, not a fact, not a truth, not a law of nature. Just a thought you've been thinking for so long that it feels like reality. And the moment you see it as a thought rather than as truth, it loses its power over you. The architecture of limitation begins to crumble, and what emerges from the rubble is what was always there underneath. Infinite possibility. You've been taught that you have potential, that inside you is a better version waiting to be unlocked, that if you just work hard enough, discipline yourself enough, overcome enough obstacles, you'll finally become who you're meant to be. And this belief, this idea that you're not yet complete, has become your prison. Because potential, by definition, is something you don't have yet. It's always in the future, always just out of reach. You chase it, and it moves further away. You work toward it, and the goalpost shifts. You achieve one level, and another appears beyond it. There's no end to becoming. There's no arrival. There's only the endless pursuit of a future version of yourself that exists only in imagination. Marcus Aurelius faced this trap directly. As emperor, everyone projected onto him their image of what a perfect ruler should be. Senators expected political savvy. Generals demanded military leadership. Citizens wanted a father figure. Philosophers hoped for an enlightened sage, and he could feel himself constantly trying to meet these expectations, to become the emperor everyone wanted him to be. Until one day he realized something that set him free. He realized that he would never become that idealized version. Not because he was inadequate, but because that version was a fantasy, an impossible standard constructed from other people's desires and his own conditioned beliefs about what he should be. And the more he chased it, the more he suffered. The more he tried to become something other than what he was, the more he lost touch with the only thing that was real, his actual present experience. So he wrote these words, as much for himself as for anyone. Treat yourself with kindness. You will not have this body forever. He stopped trying to transcend his humanity, and instead embraced it. Stopped trying to become someone else, and instead showed up fully as himself. And paradoxically, the moment he stopped trying to become, he became. This is the secret the Stoics discovered. You don't have potential. You have presence. You don't need to become something. You need to be what you already are. Not the constructed self, the persona, the mask you wear for others, but the awareness underneath all of that. The consciousness that doesn't need to improve because it's already complete. That doesn't need to achieve because it's already whole. That doesn't need to become because it always simply is. Every moment you spend focused on your potential, you're abandoning your actuality. Every moment you spend imagining a better future, you're missing the only moment where life actually exists. Every moment you spend trying to fix yourself, you're reinforcing the belief that you're broken, and that belief is the only thing that needs to be released. What if you're not a work in progress? What if you're not incomplete? What if the very idea that you need to improve is the obstacle to experiencing the peace and wholeness that's already here? What if the impossible thing you've been chasing is impossible precisely because you're already it, and you can't become what you already are? This doesn't mean you stop growing or learning or evolving. It means the growth happens naturally, organically, without the desperate energy of trying to escape yourself. It means the learning comes from curiosity rather than inadequacy. It means the evolution unfolds from presence rather than from resistance to what is. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop treating this moment as a problem that needs solving. You stop postponing your okayness until some future achievement. And in that stopping, in that simple being here now, without the story of potential, something impossible happens. You discover that what you've been seeking was never in the becoming. It was always in the being. And being requires nothing. It's already complete, already whole, already enough, already here. Where your attention goes, energy flows. This isn't mysticism, it's mechanics. Your attention is the most powerful force you possess, yet most people have no control over it. It's pulled constantly by thoughts, by external stimuli, by habits carved deep into neural pathways. You live at the mercy of whatever grabs your attention, rather than consciously directing it toward what actually matters. Marcus Aurelius understood that attention is the battleground where life is won or lost. Not on the fields of war, not in the courts of politics, but in the inner terrain of consciousness. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But thought itself is not the real power. Attention is, because thoughts have no power except the power you give them through attention." Think about it this way. In any given moment, there are thousands of things you could pay attention to. Sensations in your body, sounds in your environment, memories from your past, worries about your future, the feeling of your breath, the space around you. But you can only consciously attend to one thing at a time. And whatever you choose to give your attention to becomes your reality in that moment. If you give your attention to a fearful thought, fear becomes your experience. Not because the thought is true, not because the feared thing has happened, but simply because you've directed the spotlight of consciousness toward fear. If you give your attention to a resentful memory, resentment becomes your experience. If you give your attention to anxious future projections, anxiety becomes your experience. Your attention creates your reality more than any external circumstance. But here's the alchemy. You can choose. You can deliberately withdraw attention from what drains you and redirect it toward what nourishes you. Not through suppression, that doesn't work, but through conscious recognition. By seeing clearly that attention is a choice, you reclaim the power that's been running on autopilot your entire life. There was a monk who lived in a cave high in the mountains. Every day, 2 wolves would appear at the entrance. One was gentle and calm. The other was aggressive and hostile. A student asked the monk, "Which wolf wins the battle between them?" The monk smiled and said, "The one I feed." The student looked confused and asked, "But how do you feed them?" The monk replied, "With my attention." This is not a metaphor. This is literal truth about how your inner world works. Whatever you give attention to grows stronger. Whatever you withdraw attention from weakens and eventually dissolves. The anxious thought you keep returning to becomes an anxiety pattern. The grateful moment you notice becomes a gratitude practice. The painful story you rehearse becomes your identity. The present sensation you feel becomes your anchor to now. Marcus Aurelius practiced this alchemy constantly. In the middle of a frustrating meeting with corrupt senators, he would bring his attention to his breath. During sleepless nights worrying about military campaigns, he would redirect his attention to the feeling of the bed beneath him. When anger arose at betrayal or incompetence, He would shift attention to the impermanence of all things, the vast cosmos that contained this tiny moment of irritation. He wasn't suppressing his emotions or denying his thoughts. He was exercising sovereignty over his attention, choosing consciously where to place it rather than letting it be dragged around by circumstances. And in that choosing, in that deliberate direction of consciousness, he found a power that no external force could touch. You can do this right now. Notice where your attention is. What are you giving energy to? Is it serving you or draining you? Is it creating the experience you want or reinforcing the one you don't? And then gently, without force, redirect. Bring your attention to something present, something real, something that grounds you in this moment rather than scattering you across time. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Hear the sounds around you without labeling them. Be with your breath as it moves in and out. Simple, direct, immediate. This is the alchemy of attention. This is how the impossible becomes possible. Not through dramatic transformation, but through this simple act, repeated moment by moment, of choosing where you place the light of your awareness. There's a kind of strength you've been taught to value. The strength that never breaks, never bends, never shows weakness. The strength that pushes through pain, suppresses emotion, maintains control at all costs. You've been told that vulnerability is weakness, that showing your wounds makes you a target, that the way to survive is to armor yourself against the world. But Marcus Aurelius discovered something that contradicted everything Roman culture taught about strength. He discovered that true power comes not from hardening, but from opening. Not from invulnerability, but from embracing vulnerability completely. He wrote in his private journals about his struggles with depression, his fears, his doubts, his sense of inadequacy. And in that radical honesty, in that willingness to be seen in his totality, he found a strength that no armor could provide. Because here's what happens when you armor yourself. You don't just keep pain out. You keep life out. You don't just protect yourself from hurt. You protect yourself from connection, from intimacy, from love, from joy. You become so defended that nothing can touch you. And in that untouchable state, you become isolated, disconnected, alone in a prison of your own making. The impossible thing that happens when you allow vulnerability is this. You discover that what you thought would destroy you actually liberates you. The shame you've been hiding loses its power when you bring it into the light. The fear you've been running from dissolves when you turn and face it. The wound you've been protecting becomes the source of your deepest wisdom and compassion when you stop treating it as something to hide. There's a Japanese art form called kintsugi. When a ceramic bowl breaks, instead of throwing it away or hiding the cracks, they repair it with gold. The breakage becomes part of the bowl's beauty. The cracks are honored rather than concealed. And the repaired bowl is considered more valuable than it was before it broke. More beautiful. More whole precisely because it acknowledges its brokenness. This is the courage of vulnerability. Not pretending you're unbroken, but honoring the places where you've been shattered. Not hiding your scars, but recognizing them as proof of survival, as evidence of resilience, as the map of your journey. The impossible becomes possible when you stop trying to be invulnerable and instead embrace your full humanity, cracks and all. Marcus Aurelius could have presented himself as the perfect emperor, could have hidden his struggles behind the imperial mask, could have pretended to have all the answers, to be in complete control, to be the infallible leader Rome wanted him to be. But he chose differently. He chose to be honest about his uncertainty, open about his fears, transparent about his process of trying to live with integrity in impossible circumstances. And that honesty, that vulnerability, didn't weaken his authority. It strengthened it. Because people could sense his authenticity, could feel that he was genuinely trying to do what was right rather than just maintain an image. Could trust him precisely because he didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. This is the power available to you. Not the power of perfection, but the power of authenticity. Not the strength of never falling, but the resilience of getting back up. Not the invulnerability of armor, but the courage of an open heart. And the impossible thing that happens when you choose this path is that you stop being afraid. Not because nothing can hurt you anymore, but because you realize you can handle being hurt. You discover that vulnerability is not weakness, but the greatest strength. The willingness to be seen, to be real, to be human. Something in you has to die for the impossible to become possible. Not your body, not your essence, but the version of yourself you've been clinging to. The identity you constructed to survive, to fit in, to be acceptable. That self, built from old beliefs and outdated strategies and inherited patterns, has to be released. And release feels like death because, in a very real way, it is. Marcus Aurelius meditated on death daily, not morbidly, but as a practice of letting go. He understood that everything is constantly dying and being reborn. Cells in your body, thoughts in your mind. The person you were yesterday is already gone. The person you'll be tomorrow doesn't exist yet. There is only this moment, this breath, this now. And in this now, you have the opportunity to let the old self die and allow what wants to emerge to be born. But most people resist this death with everything they have. They cling to who they've been, even when that identity causes suffering, even when it's clearly not working anymore, even when every cell in their body is screaming for transformation. Because the known, no matter how painful, feels safer than the unknown. The familiar hell feels preferable to the unfamiliar heaven. And so they stay stuck, trapped in a version of themselves that no longer fits, like a snake that refuses to shed its skin. The death I'm speaking of is not dramatic. It's not a breakdown, though sometimes it looks like one. It's a letting go, a release of the need to be someone, a willingness to not know who you are anymore, to let the story you've been telling fall away and rest in the wordless truth underneath all stories. This is terrifying to the ego because the ego is the story. It is the sense of being a separate self with a past and a future and a whole narrative about its life. And when that story is questioned, when it starts to dissolve, the ego experiences it as annihilation. But what's actually dying is only the false, the constructed. The mask you've been wearing so long you forgot it wasn't your face. What remains when the mask falls away is what you actually are, the presence that was there before the story began and will be there after the story ends. The awareness that has never been born and can never die. The consciousness that is reading these words right now without needing any identity to do so. There's a caterpillar that spins a cocoon around itself. Inside that cocoon, it doesn't gradually transform. It completely dissolves. Its body literally liquefies. Every structure breaks down into undifferentiated cellular soup. And from that dissolution, from that complete letting go of what it was, something new emerges. Not an improved caterpillar, but something entirely different. A butterfly, a creature that can fly. You are in the cocoon, you can feel it. The old structures are dissolving, the old identity isn't working anymore, the old strategies are failing. And you're terrified because you don't know what's on the other side. You can't know. You can only trust the process. Only surrender to the transformation that's trying to happen through you. Only allow the death that must occur for the rebirth to follow. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." He wasn't being cold or dismissive of grief. He was recognizing that loss is the price of life, that death is the doorway to renewal, that you cannot become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you've been. Something must be released, something must die, and that dying, painful as it is not your enemy. It's your liberation. The impossible becomes possible when you stop resisting the death that's trying to happen, when you stop fighting the dissolution, when you trust that what's falling away needs to fall away, and what's emerging is exactly what needs to emerge. You don't have to make it happen. You only have to allow it. To stop gripping, to open your hands and let go. You've spent your life divided between past and future, replaying what happened, rehearsing what might happen, never fully here. Your mind time travels constantly, pulling you into memories and projections while the only moment that actually exists, this one, goes unnoticed. And in that chronic absence from now, you miss your life. You miss the only place where peace exists, where power exists, where truth exists. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sounds simple, but contains everything. Confine yourself to the present, not as a prison, but as liberation from the prison of time, because the past is gone. It exists only as thought in this moment. The future hasn't arrived. It exists only as imagination in this moment. Everything you've ever experienced, you've experienced now. Everything you will ever experience, you will experience now. There is no other time. There is only this eternal now appearing fresh in every instant. But your mind doesn't want to accept this. It insists that the past is real, that the future matters, that you need to keep one foot in yesterday and one in tomorrow just to stay safe. And so you're never present, never whole, never here. You're always somewhere else, which is nowhere, which is why you feel so lost. The impossible thing that happens when you truly arrive in this moment is that time stops being your enemy. The anxiety about the future dissolves because the future doesn't exist right now. The regret about the past releases because the past isn't happening right now. All that remains is what is. And what is, when met, without resistance, without judgment, without the story of what it means or where it's going, is enough. More than enough. Complete. There's a monastery where monks practice something called just this. When eating, just eating. When walking, just walking. When washing dishes, just washing dishes. No thinking about other things. No planning or remembering. Just complete presence with the activity at hand. And visitors to this monastery report feeling a peace they've never experienced, even though nothing particularly special is happening. Just ordinary activities done with extraordinary presence. This is available to you right now. Not someday when you've mastered meditation or achieved enlightenment. Right now. In this moment. The sensation of your body breathing. The feeling of these words landing in your awareness. The space around and within you. This is the eternal now. Not something to achieve, but something to notice. It's already here. It's what's always here, underneath the stream of thought that usually dominates your attention. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire from this place. He made life and death decisions affecting millions of people. Yet he did so from presence, rather than anxiety. How? By recognizing that he could only ever act in the present moment. The decisions were made now. The actions were taken now. The consequences would unfold now, in whatever now they appeared. Worrying about the future didn't help him govern better. It only disturbed his clarity in the present. This is the secret to handling the impossible. You don't handle it all at once. You don't solve the whole problem, heal the whole wound, transform the whole life. You simply meet this moment, just this one, and then the next one, and then the next. Each moment is manageable when you're actually in it rather than carrying the weight of all moments at once. When you're fully present, problems don't disappear, but they lose their power to overwhelm you. Because you're not adding the story of what they mean about you or your life. You're not projecting them into endless future suffering. You're simply here with what is, responding from presence rather than reacting from fear. And in that response, in that grounded nowness, wisdom arises naturally. You know what to do because you're not clouded by thoughts about what happened or what might happen. The eternal now is not a place you arrive at after years of practice. It's where you already are. Where you've always been. Where you'll always be. You can't leave it even if you try. You can only believe you've left it by getting lost in thought. And the moment you recognize that, the moment you notice the now that's here regardless of what's happening in it, you discover the ground of all being, the peace that passes understanding, the power that doesn't come from force, but from presence. The impossible made possible through the simplest thing, being here now. You are not here by accident. This life, with all its challenges and blessings, with all its pain and beauty, is not random. You have been given a sacred responsibility whether you recognize it or not a burden but a calling, to be conscious, to wake up, to live with awareness rather than sleepwalking through your days, to bring light to the darkness, not just in the world but in your own heart. Marcus Aurelius understood this responsibility deeply. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This wasn't a command, it was an invitation, an acknowledgement that you have agency, that your life matters, that how you show up ripples out into the fabric of existence in ways you can't measure but are nonetheless real. Most people avoid this responsibility. They prefer to believe they're victims of circumstance, that they have no choice, that life happens to them rather than through them. Because responsibility is heavy. It means you can't blame anyone else anymore, can't hide behind excuses, can't pretend you're powerless. It means recognizing that in every moment you're choosing where to place your attention, choosing how to interpret what happens, choosing how to respond, choosing who to be. And that choosing, that continuous stream of small decisions, creates the texture of your life, the quality of your character, the impact you have on others, the legacy you leave. Not legacy in the grand sense of historical importance, but legacy in the sense of how people feel after they've been in your presence, whether you left them more aware or more asleep, more connected or more isolated, more human or more defended. This is the impossible that becomes possible when you accept your sacred responsibility. You stop being a passive recipient of life and become an active creator of it. You stop waiting for permission or perfect conditions. You stop postponing your aliveness until someday. You step into the fullness of what you are, knowing that you won't do it perfectly, that you'll make mistakes, that you'll fall and stumble and fail. But you do it anyway because it's what you're here for. There's a story of a student who asked his teacher, "What is my purpose?" The teacher handed him a candle and said, "Light this." The student lit the candle, and the teacher said, "Now take it into the dark room and see what happens." The student did, and the darkness was pushed back by the small flame. When he returned, the teacher said, "That's your purpose, to be light in darkness, not to illuminate everything at once, but to bring what light you can to where you are. You don't need to save the world. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have it all figured out. You only need to be responsible for your own consciousness, for tending the light of awareness within you, for bringing presence to your interactions, for responding from your highest self rather than your most conditioned patterns, for doing the inner work that allows you to show up more clear, more compassionate, more real." Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of an empire, yet his greatest focus was on his own character, on being a person of integrity, on aligning his actions with his values, on remaining human in circumstances that encouraged cruelty and corruption. This wasn't selfishness, this was wisdom, because he understood that the only thing he could truly change was himself. And by changing himself, by committing to his own growth and awareness, he changed everything he touched. This is your sacred responsibility, not to fix others, not to control outcomes, not to make the world conform to your vision, but to wake up, to become conscious, to live with integrity, to love without attachment, to serve without needing recognition, to be the change rather than demand it from others. And in that being, in that living embodiment of awareness, the impossible becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Something has shifted in you as you've listened to these words. You can feel it. A loosening, a recognition, a remembering of something you've always known but forgotten. The message has landed, not in your thinking mind, that's still trying to figure it out, to analyze it, to fit it into familiar categories, but deeper, in the part of you that doesn't need words, in the awareness that's been here all along, listening, witnessing, waiting. The impossible thing has happened, not dramatically, not with fanfare or lightning bolts, but quietly, subtly, irrevocably, because you can't unhear what you've heard. You can't unknown what you now know. The seed has been planted, and whether you nurture it or not, whether you water it with practice or let it lie dormant, it's there, growing at its own pace, working at levels you can't see, transforming you from the inside out. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations never intending anyone else to read them. They were reminders to himself, notes to keep him aligned with truth when everything around him pushed toward corruption and compromise. And yet those private journals have survived 2,000 years, reaching millions of people because the truth they contain is timeless, universal. It speaks to something in every human heart that recognizes it as familiar, as home. This message you've received today is the same message. Not new information, but ancient knowing. Not something added to you, but something revealed that was always there. You are not broken. You are not inadequate. You are not separate from the source of all peace, all power, all wholeness. You have simply believed you were, and that belief created the experience of separation, of lack, of impossibility. But belief can change. Perception can shift. And when it does, when you see clearly what you actually are rather than what you've been conditioned to believe you are, reality reorganizes. Not the external circumstances necessarily, though those often shift too, but your relationship to them. You move from victim to creator, from resistance to acceptance, from seeking to finding, from becoming to being. The impossible becomes possible when you stop making it impossible through your beliefs, when you stop searching for what you already are, when you stop postponing your wholeness until some future achievement, when you simply rest in this moment, this breath, this awareness, and recognize it as enough, as everything, as what you've been seeking in all the wrong places. This doesn't mean your challenges disappear. Marcus Aurelius still faced war and plague and betrayal, but he faced them from a different place, from the center rather than the surface, from being rather than identity, from presence rather than story, and that changed everything. Not the circumstances, but the experience of the circumstances. Not the events, but his relationship to them. You can live from this place too. Not perfectly, not constantly, but more and more as you remember what you've heard today. As you practice returning to presence, as you question the beliefs that create impossibility, as you accept your sacred responsibility to be conscious, as you allow the old self to die and the true self to emerge, as you recognize that the eternal now is the only time there is, and in this now, everything is possible. The message is simple. You are not who you think you are. You are infinitely more. You are the awareness in which all experience arises. You are the consciousness that cannot be broken or diminished or lost. You are already what you're seeking, already whole, already free, already home. The impossible is only impossible when you believe you're the small self, the limited identity, the story of inadequacy. But you're not that. You never were. You've only believed you were. And now, having heard this message, that belief begins to dissolve. Let it go. Let the old story fall away. Let the impossible become possible through the simplest shift. From identification with thought to recognition of awareness. From seeking outside to finding inside. From future to now. From doing to being. This is what Marcus Aurelius discovered in the midst of chaos. This is what countless beings across time have realized. This is what's available to you, not someday, but right now. The message has landed. What you do with it is up to you. You can dismiss it as words and return to your habitual patterns, or you can let it work on you, change you, transform you. You can resist the impossible or allow it to unfold. You can cling to who you've been or trust the becoming that's trying to happen. The choice, as always, is yours. But know this. You've been given a gift today, a reminder, a transmission of truth that has the power to change everything if you let it. Marcus Aurelius left his wisdom for you across 2 millennia. The Stoics practiced and preserved these insights through centuries, and now they've reached you, in this moment, in this form. Not by accident, not randomly, but because you were ready to hear them. Because something in you called out for this message. And the universe, in its mysterious way, delivered it. Listen to this message. Really listen. Let it penetrate beyond your thinking mind into the core of your being. Let it remind you of what you've always known but forgotten. Let it activate the impossible. Let it set you free. Not from your life, but from the story about your life that's been imprisoning you. Not from your humanity, but from the belief that your humanity is a problem needing to be transcended. You are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you're meant to become. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust the unfolding. And remember, always remember, the words of Marcus Aurelius. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The impossible has happened. The message has landed. Now live it.